next weekend we have women's basketball at 12, and I'll be working that game. Then
Good morning, everyone. Oh, that was a good response. So welcome to our annual Alumni Leaders on Campus panel discussion. This program, a collaboration between the Office of Alumni Relations and the College of Hospitality Management, celebrates our alumni who are doing great things in their respective industries. I hope you find their experiences and stories inspiring. And just so you know, my name's Julie Viscardi-Smalley. I teach in the SEAM program. And if you have questions during the event, there are microphones on the side, so you can feel free, to ask questions. And please use the microphone so everyone can hear you. But there will be a short time for questioning at the end. And then at the very end, there'll be a few moments if you want to come up and say hi to our guests. So I'll go ahead and dive in with our first question if everyone's ready. Cool. So alumni, please take a moment to introduce yourselves and share your major, the year you graduated, and your current position with a brief description of what you do. I'll say it again. Your major, the year you graduated, and your current position, a brief description of what you do. Can we start with you, Rick?
Sure.
Stay on.
What's that? I'm Rick Simone. I graduated in 1995, so the campus looked a lot different then than it does now. I have a bachelor's in marketing, and my current position is I'm the president of EGN Consulting. And we do marketing, public relations, government relations, and event production.
Yeah. And he has a fan. You have a fan club out there.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I'm Steve Maz. I'm a regional director for Walmart stores. Probably don't have to do much explaining about that, but I have 10 market managers that report to me, 25,000 employees, and manage about $10 billion in revenue. I graduated in 2007, Hospitality College.
Thank you.
Jeff Lima, 2006, hospitality grad. I am a complex director of revenue. That is as simple as I can say it. My job is deciding, who we take in and when and how much they're going to pay, essentially, for the hotels.
Morning, I'm Matt Tortora. I'm the CEO and president of Crave. I actually started a company here at Johnson & Wales when I graduated in 2015, food service management, and I also had done a culinary degree here prior to that. And we build e-commerce technology for food and beverage businesses.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Bano, class of 2015 SEE student. I'm currently the coordinator of facilities and operations over at Brown University, over in athletics. Oversee 38 varsity teams, do scheduling, facilities maintenance, operations, kind of a little bit of everything.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bradley J. Vanderstad. I also graduated 2015, travel tourism management. I manage a staff of one. Okay, it's me. I run a tour business here in Providence. So when I came to Johnson & Wales, I fell in love with the city, and I'm looking to start it real time, buy a bus, and start driving people around and show people the city that I love so much. Thank you.
My name is Jenna Sullivan. I graduated in '07 hospitality management, and I am currently the director of rooms operations at the Hilton Boston Logan Airport.
Thank you, everyone. So we're wondering if you could tell us about the first job that you had after graduation, or first jobs after graduation, and how those led to other opportunities in the industry. Rick, can we start with you again? Sure. Thank you.
So my first position after graduating was actually an internship that I started while I was graduating with Bugaboo Creek corporate headquarters. So they at the time owned the Capitol Grill, Hemingway's, a variety of smaller other restaurants that they had, but they were expanding and literally building Bugaboo Creeks and Capitol Grills all over the country. So it turned from an internship to a marketing assistant. I stayed with them for a solid year and traveled the country basically opening up those restaurants. So we would place the marketing and media buys and then planned what they called the customer events. So it was the grand opening events for each of the restaurants, so coordinating with the neighborhood associations, the politicians, suppliers, that kind of stuff. So that was my first position right after I graduated. I literally ended my internship one day, and the next day started as an employee with them. So.
Wow, thank you.
Hey, so for me, I did a variety of things after graduation, but first and foremost, I stayed on as a resident director, so I was involved in residential life on campus, and I took that pretty seriously. I just liked leading folks. I liked developing talent. I didn't know it then, but I really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed working with people and not being behind a desk. That led me to get into financial services a little bit, which was just another passion of mine, and then I started working for Target stores and just started leading several departments in a store. Very random, right, to get involved in retail. I made some really great connections and really made some great impressions with those that I worked for through results, through relationships. And then from there, I started working for a little startup company, and then a few contacts called me and said, hey, we're doing some great things in Walmart. So I joined them and went over as a district manager in Northeast Pennsylvania. And then from there, I moved on as a regional director. Here I have everything in Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, Metro New York. Glad to be back home in this area.
Thank you.
For me, while I was in school, I was busting my butt doing bellboy duties at the Copley Square Hotel. I was going to school full-time down here from 7 to 3 in the morning, and then I would drive up to Boston at night and work 3 to 11 there. But after that, I truly had made it. I graduated and I became the assistant front office manager. I had reached the mecca. And maybe 6 months into that, I was surfing around on H Careers. Write that one down if you don't know it. It's for all of you. hcareers.com. That's my shameless plug. The I got a job as an assistant general manager of a 84-room residence in Brockton, Massachusetts, for all of you that know the little city. I'm going to tell you guys straight up, I went there and I worked like 80 hours a week for 13 months, and it killed me. But what it did, and I'm being like straight honest with all of you because you're all sitting where I was a couple years ago, is it gave me a lot of perspective that we shouldn't just be chasing a title right away. I mean, you're going to get there, but you're going to have to work hard to do it. So from there, I kind of found my footing, took a step back, became a front office manager, got a lot of rooms division experience, and that led me to revenue. A great part about that was it gave me some perspective as to the consequence of what I was doing and how that was going to work for the front end of the house too. So anyway, I've been in revenue now for 8 years or so, and it's pretty cool. I'm sure we'll get into that more. Thanks.
Revenue is cool. I guess technically my first job after graduating from Johnson & Wales was working for myself, but I started really getting involved in what I would do as my business through an internship here at Johnson & Wales. I actually started the internship with this restaurant, which is no longer in existence anymore, unfortunately, but this happened to be really at a time when farm to table was more from a fad moving into being a trend that would be here for, well, it's still here, right? And I think, I just really saw a challenge, a problem in how farm to table worked for a restaurant, and started there and decided to start a company. It was actually here at Johnson & Wales something called Shark Fest that we launched the business at back in 2015. And so I think the business was around for a couple of months before I actually graduated from here.
So while I was a student here, I worked in athletics. I was a student worker, worked in the equipment room, did game days, worked in operations. Absolutely loved that. Another thing I did was I volunteered with the Providence Bruins on game days and loved that. So I actually did that for 3 years. I worked with game day promotions. I worked with the youth hockey department. So when I graduated, they said, hey, you've been here for the last 3 years volunteering your time. You want to get paid? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. So I did started that job as a ticket sales associate, and pretty quickly realized that I like the game days. I do not like the cold calling. So did that for a year, stuck it out for the season, and then decided to go to grad school. I wanted to get back into college athletics. It was something that I really enjoyed when I was an undergrad. So I actually went to Syracuse, got my master's degree, worked in athletics up at Syracuse. And through connections, made my way over to Harvard for an internship. I was there for about 8 months. And then a job opened up at Brown University in the Ivy League, just like Harvard was. So applied for it. I never thought I'd actually be back in Rhode Island. I'm from Rhode Island. And I got the job, and I've been there for the last 2 years now, and I love it.
All right, so I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't necessarily recommend that y'all do what I did, but take some lessons from it maybe, okay? So I worked at the Radisson while I was here, okay? Was the Radisson still a thing so recently? Yeah, okay, all right. So I was a teaching assistant at the Radisson, and what I learned most from my work at the Radisson is that I didn't want to do that, right? So it's an important lesson to learn. You don't want to be stuck in a job that you don't like forever. So I was looking down, I had been considered and accepted. They gave me a job as an assistant manager down in Newport at a fancy hotel, and I was kind of excited about it, but at the same time, they were telling me I was going to get 7 days off over the first 2 years. I was like, okay, maybe not what I want to do. Yeah, so I kind of freaked out, and I flew to Ecuador for 6 weeks. Yeah, my mom wasn't thrilled about that. Yeah. But it was fun, and I learned a lot, yeah. So I came back here, and I was thinking about my future in hospitality and deciding what do I want to do with my life. So I was working at the Providence Marriott, and I was watching the TV, and it was election year, and there's a lot of stuff going on. I was like, I want to do more to change the world, I don't want to stand behind this desk. I want to get out there and do something that I perceived at the time was big. So I learned that I have a very big appetite for risk, and I moved across the country to California to build houses with Habitat for Humanity for a year with AmeriCorps. Met a lot of cool people, moved around the west coast of the country for a while, very pretty, highly recommend. Then I was like, let's keep this going. I'm going to move down to North Carolina and be a 7th grade math teacher for a year with Teach for America. I think I tried things. I was so excited about different ideas and helping people. I was bouncing around the entire nation. And then now I'm back here. And I'm like, you know what? How am I going to mix my history in tourism and my love of showing people new places? Because I love Providence. I think I said that already. Love Providence. So how am I going to mix my tourism experience with my philanthropic kind of interests, kind of feel good? So I found this business idea of giving tours of Providence because I feel like it's good for the city. I kind of get that philanthropic, that good feeling, but also using my experience in Johnson & Wales tourism management. So that's where I'm at now. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm kind of glad I'm going after Bradley because it's going to show you 2 different ways to go because he was all over the place. And I have been rooms operations since before I graduated. My first hotel job was at the Hampton Inn in Warwick, Rhode Island as a front desk GSA, guest service agent. When I graduated, my first job, I did a CMT program, a corporate manager and training program with Hyatt, and I've been in rooms operations since then. And I have also seen the world, but at a discount in really nice hotels.
Thank you, everyone. So I took down some notes while you were all talking for some takeaways. So we like getting paid, right? That's good. And some of the things that I was really happy to hear you say resonate with some of the things we talk about in classes. Some of you mentioned the internship as being kind of a really important step, and then working in industry while you were in school. I wonder to what extent that was particularly beneficial for some of you, and a lot of you mentioned networking as well. And this isn't a question for everyone. I was just kind of adding this in. To what extent was working in industry while you were in school or working in industry early and building that network important? If anybody wants to chime in on that. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I know you guys are probably going through the resume classes and how important that piece of it is, and it still is. So is LinkedIn. If you don't know LinkedIn, write that one down too. It's nice to have something to put on your resume and to be able to show that you have some relevant experience, because as much as, and no offense guys in the back, it's great to have class experience, but you're going to get into the industry and people are going to look. They're going to want to see experience, and this is the time to get it. I mean, you can have a part-time job being a bellman or being a front desk agent, or whatever, for your respective fields, but without that, they're looking at you as somebody that they're going to have to work on, right? And our industry is so pressing, and there are deadlines and time that comes along with it. Training is expensive, training is time consuming, and people aren't going to, I hate to say this, but they're not going to want to sit around investing that time in somebody when they can find somebody right next to them that may have a little bit of experience. So I know it's tough and you guys want to party on your weekends or whatever, but I did. But it's so important. It's really, you're setting yourself up to succeed down the road.
And I would, if I could.
Yeah, please.
And I would go so far as to say, even if you have a job now in school that doesn't align with your current field, right? Because some of you, you have a big barrier to entry, right? When you think of where you are in the university now and what you want to do, you may not be able to get a seat around that table right now. But any work experience, I think, is important for you to learn how to do your job and do it well, right? How to be the best at whatever that is, right? So if you're a front desk clerk, if you are a janitor, whatever that is, I've done all of those jobs, and I pride myself in doing that job better than anyone else. And I think that will lead you to astronomical success in whatever you do, because that's something that's innate, that's in you. You're gonna need that drive, and you're gonna need that passion in whatever you choose to do, and that is gonna be your edge. That's gonna be your competitive edge. And if it doesn't align with what you wanna do when you graduate or a job that you wanna go work for, then it's your job to create a pitch that shows the employer how that experience was relevant, right? Even if that line is so dotted and it's so vague That's for you to figure out how you're going to market and show your value.
Oh, and I think he's a perfect example in talking about the networking, because you said how you went from Target to Walmart. So I don't think the networking ever stops for me, regardless of where you start or where you come from. I don't think the networking ever stops. I know for myself that it doesn't, and I can guess from the alumni up here with me that it doesn't for them as well. But I worked in hospitality while I was getting a marketing degree. I worked at what is now the Hilton as a bellman, and then I went from the Hilton to the Westin when the Westin is now the Omni opened up, and that was my job. So I was getting a hospitality degree by working there and getting paid for it, which was nice, and then getting my marketing degree coming to school. But the networking and the connections that I made in the hotels were insane. Every restaurateur in the state, in the city, wanted to know who you were so that you could send guests to them. Every transportation company, every nightclub wanted to know who you were so that you could be referring guests to them. And then I got the job at the Westin because while it was under construction, all of their people were staying at the Hilton. So it was meeting them, and then I was hired before the hotel even opened to go there. So I think the networking doesn't ever stop, and regardless of whatever position you're in, your club's in. And I got to tell you, honestly, the professors here at Johnson & Wales, not just now, because I think now they're on steroids with how well they help the students, but when I was here, it was amazing. I mean, I credit people like Liz Cavino, Mike Stabatoni, Karen, all these people that are here, that the connections that they make, and I think what they're bringing you now by bringing all of us here is even more valuable for you. You can't ever stop. And to the point of being able to enjoy your weekends and go out, not going to Ecuador, which I wish I was, but going out and enjoying your weekends, there are so much stuff that you can do in Providence right now where you can be enjoying your weekend for free. Go to these events, eat and drink for free. All you got to do is sign up for these emailing lists, and you're getting asked and invited to everything, from gallery opens to hospitality events to tourism things that are going on. You get into them and you're networking, plus you're enjoying your weekend.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
I didn't think I was coming back to hospitality for a little while. So can you imagine if I walked out of the Marriott like, see y'all later, like, I'm never gonna need you again. And then now starting a tourism business, going back and saying, oh, actually, I'd like to have, your reference. Oh, I'd like to let my guests park here. Oh, I'd like to, like all these partnership ideas. So it's so important that even if you think, never doing that again, that you ought to still have positive relationships with people, because you never know when it's going to come around, So I'm a member of the Convention and Visitors Bureau now, and I see the ladies that I used to work with at the Radisson, and they're like, Bradley, how the heck are you? And I'm telling them what I'm doing, and they're so happy to support me. So keep those relationships positive and keep putting yourself out there to meet new people. It is really important.
I'll share too. Professor Zakili sitting back there, he was my academic advisor and my first professor in the hospitality college. And I remember the first paper I did for him was on Motel 6, and it was like a deep dive research paper. I think he wanted 10 pages, double spaced, super hard for me. But looking back on that made an impression on me, and I remember that paper specifically because I remember how I finished it. I said, we'll leave the light on for you. I used their tagline in that report. And when I think of my role today, there are so many similarities to what Professor Zakili, his expectation, and what he asked for in those things that may not seem relevant today, but I guarantee you, if you want to do something great, or you really want to drive change and impact something, you will have to do research, and you will have to deliver your best in a form like that, right? So I've done deep dive analysis on Costco. I've done it on ShopRite. I've done it in Stop and Shop, right? Where I have people to write that stuff for me and gather pictures and do all of those things. But at the end of the day, it's coming to my desk, and I've got to read through it, and I've got to give the same feedback. It's like a 180 from what Professor Zakili gave me. So there's a lot of relevance. It's about you just giving your all so that it can help you later on.
Thanks. Go ahead, please.
I would just say one thing with the research component, and I think it's a good example of also how experience really plays into perspective. I think if you can do anything over the next 5 to 10 years, it's just try to gain as much perspective as you possibly can. Go work for Habitat for Humanity, go do something for free, go put yourself outside of your comfort zone and try new things. 10 years before I came to Johnson & Wales, I was a nuclear missile technician on a submarine. I mean, you never know where you're gonna go or how you're gonna get to where you eventually will be, but the research, the experience that you gain along the way is more valuable now than a degree from Brown or from Ivy League school or from some really, very highly regarded institution. It's just changing. And I hire people almost every week. And my company is growing and it's great. But it's amazing to me how often I meet a candidate who puts most of their credence and who they are in that degree or that school or the name or even just who they know. And I think the network is extremely important, and Johnson & Wales is a great place to be if you want to tap into that network and get out there. And you can hear how many of us had our starts somewhere through the school itself. But I think the perspective is the number one thing you can do. And there's no wrong answer. Like the janitor, the garbage truck, whatever. Like I draw on experience from washing dishes in a kitchen as much as I draw on my experience from, what I've done in the last year or the last 2 years. And I think it's really an important part of it.
Thank you. Those were some really motivating Monday morning pep talks. That was wonderful. Thank you. So this question is for everybody. And some of you kind of answered this, so it's almost a nice segue. How did the university help prepare you for a successful career? And so maybe we'll start with Jenna this time and work this way.
All right, so I graduated in '07, back when they had an attendance policy. I don't know if they still do that. But they set expectations to be here every day. They set expectations, they set our classroom schedules so that we could have jobs while I went to school. So Johnson & Wales gave me that opportunity to try different things and have jobs while I was in school. So I knew when I graduated I wanted to be in hotel operations because I had done that, and that is how my career progressed from there. So it was nice, easy.
Fantastic. Let's see. So Johnson & Wales, let's see. I want to say something, but I'm going to say it differently. So we have a distinguished professor in the back, Dr. Eldad Boker, who truly inspired me. But I want to say that a lot of the education that I got at Johnson & Wales was outside the classroom. Okay, it manifested in the opportunities that I took on by my own volition rather than someone telling me, oh, you have to take this class, this class, this class. So I jumped on the newspaper. I was a student government person. I was just running around being a part of every single club that I could ever be a part of. And I met so many people, and so many different perspectives. And it really kind of broadened my entire worldview of how the world works. We're not all just going in to be front desk agents. We have passions and dreams and different interests and different ways to follow and so many different ways to live life. And so that was it really opened my eyes to that. So.
Yeah, I can say, as a freshman, I know sitting in those first few classes, Professor Drowan, I remember she was bringing in, different people that would come to class, and a lot of those things were always event-based. I was an SEE major, so whether it's doing volunteering down at the marathon with the CVS Classic, whether it's volunteering at a golf tournament. She always had all those opportunities, and it was actually a requirement of the class. And that was something that I loved that first trimester, and that continued throughout. No matter what class I had, it was always an opportunity to volunteer at an event. It was an opportunity for someone to come in and speak to the class about what they do and make those connections. I started at the Providence Bruins because one of their workers came over and was looking for volunteer help. So did that the first year, and they wanted me back, and like I said, it just kind of went from one thing to the next, and it ended up leading to a full-time job. But I think, as anyone said, it's what you make of it while you are here. You have to take those opportunities and run with it. I also worked down at the Newport Gulls because that was a baseball team similar to the Cape Cod Baseball League, and that was something that I learned about in class. So I did that a whole summer, absolutely loved it. Made connections there. I have friends who work for the Dallas Cowboys who work at the University of South Carolina, and that's all from just hearing about it in class, going down there and working there, and then making those connections. So I know we all talked about how big networking is, and you have to take advantage of it while you're here. A lot of the people that I was in class with, I still talk to them. They're all over the country. I think we've seen it today where you were in Ecuador, and everyone's kind of done some crazy things. So you got to keep in touch with all your classmates as well, because they're all going to be the same people that you're going to be working with. The industry, I know it seems huge, but when you really think about it, it's a smaller industry. You have a lot of connections. You keep, seeing the same people. It could be a few years from now. An example of that, when I worked at the Providence Bruins, a kid I worked with, we had a great relationship. So obviously I left, I work in athletics now. Well, he actually works at the Rhode Island Sports Commission now, and I'll be working with him again. I hadn't worked with him in a few years, so it's always interesting to see how things overlap again.
Yeah. Johnson, I mean, I think I was standing right on this green X when I launched my business here at Shark Fest. And it was a really great event. And so, I mean, Johnson & Wales played a very big role in that whole thing and just bringing an idea to fruition and actually doing something with it. I had a very different kind of probably student life while I was going to Johnson & Wales. I mean, I bought a house before I ever moved here in Rhode Island to go to school here. I came as a veteran with, a much I was a bit older than the typical student here at Johnson & Wales, and I mean, I'd have to say like the number one thing was kind of experiential education and that factor that plays in here at Johnson & Wales. And if you take advantage of it, it's definitely an asset compared to, at least from what I can tell at this point, from most other schools. It's something a lot of people probably take for granted, but there was a lot here, and the Entrepreneurship Center is a place where I went. It was enough to get me over the edge. I had started building a software program to make my life easier as a chef, working with farms, totally learning it on my own as I went, and it was really here and through the Entrepreneurship Center that they were kind of like kicked me over the edge. The little push I needed, which wasn't a lot, but I needed it, and jumped out there and raised some funds and started a company from scratch. And definitely the whole thing wouldn't have happened, I think, if I had gone a different route or hadn't been at Johnson & Wales. So.
I'd say beverage appreciation. Nothing? No, it was a great class. But just to piggyback off of what you just said, it really was about the relevance of the work and our time here. Everything was leading towards our next step. So, it was the resume class, it was the Statler dining, with Jarvie. I had a menu cost. I forget what the name of the class was, but we had to figure out how to cost out a menu. Yeah, thanks. There we go. You're paying more attention than me. All of these things were things that we use and that I use now, and that was my biggest worry about going back. Because I took a year off after I graduated high school. I didn't care for high school. I was good at it. I'm a good student, but it wasn't really for me back then, right? I took that year and came back, and I think my biggest fear coming into college was that I was going to go sit through a 0 to 1500 history class that I wouldn't. It would have been great for Jeopardy when I'm at home, but it wasn't really going to do much for me outside of that. But I got here, and I'd say it was 70-30 in the right direction, where most of what I was taking in school was actually going to help me, and it did. So I'm going to say just the relevance of this place it's something that you're all going to benefit from, guaranteed.
Yeah, and I would say for me it's two things. It's network and exposure as one. So a lot of the panelists today talked about their network and the relationships that they've built on campus. I did that through residential life, and I did that through getting a lot of experience leading teams and leading process change and culture. And then working at the Johnson Wales Inn, working at the Radisson Airport Hotel. Again, I would count that as exposure and network. And then I would say is it something I said? Is it something? I would say the next thing I would add is all of my classes at Johnson Wales, they had a good way of explaining the technical aspect of every job in a hotel or in a restaurant. And I think it's really important for me from a perspective of leadership. When you're leading large-scale teams, you have an edge when you know what everybody's job is, right? So you can lead those people without ever doing their job, But if you know the basics of everybody's job, that people are, the people who are working for you and what those expectations are, it's just gonna make you so much more effective as a leader. You're gonna have an easier time securing buy-in, and you're gonna have a much easier time driving a positive culture for change.
So I'll try to make mine a little as brief as I can for you, but to be very honest, my answer is going to be dramatically different than everybody else on the stage because I came here a lot earlier than most of these individuals. When I came here, the university looks nothing like it does now. So I have to say that for my first couple of years, I didn't think I was getting shit from Johnson & Wales University. So I came here from Syracuse, I call it Syracuse, and I paid my way to come through school my entire way. My first year or two here, I thought I was just here to have fun. I was out doing everything and anything I could. Liz Covino is one of the people that rescued me. Some other people from Residential Life rescued me. She made me join a club for community service. I was out all of a sudden meeting everybody, doing all this stuff. And they made me an RA so that I would stop getting in trouble, which ended up helping me because it paid for the room and board. So I was told at the end of my freshman year that I was going to be an RA. My path was a lot different. The university didn't look like it did now. They didn't have a resume class. They didn't have the SEAM major. They didn't have a lot of this great stuff that evolved. McNulty Hall was built while I was here. Snowden didn't exist. So, yes, I'm dating myself. So the thing that I think I learned the most that came out of this, and it wasn't until my junior and senior year from the university, was how to evolve, how to grow with the school and grow with what was happening in Providence. Providence didn't look like this. The convention center and the Westin and now the Omni were just being built as well. So downtown was a dump. Where McNulty was, Laurie Wright, was dirt and rocks, and we'd play football on it. It was an abandoned field where McNulty was. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I was able to get out of coming here. And truthfully, it made me fall in love with Providence. I felt like the tourism side and the marketing side I got all together. I stayed here. I never left. After going through all that, and still having to stay here and have a job right away to pay for college, to pay for my loans, I stayed here. And the things that are offered, I think that flexibility, the university coming back to me, I probably had more interaction with the university the year after I graduated than I did my entire 4 years here. Truthfully, it was the way, because the school was growing and evolving. So I think that's the biggest thing I got out of it, was how to evolve and how to be patient and learn to do different things. And truthfully, how to fall in love with a beautiful city and state.
Thank you, everyone. That was so inspiring to hear. There's a lot of Providence pride up here. That's great to hear. But I appreciated how some of your responses resonate. What we're still doing. Taking opportunities that come your way. And I appreciated, Jeff. I think you mentioned knowing the basics of everyone's job, and that might be something that you're able to do as you're working some entry-level positions along the way. And I couldn't agree more that knowing about, kind of those types of positions make you a better manager. Some of you mentioned volunteering and how you started your business and how your network starts now. So I appreciate that some of those, experiences resonate again with what we're still talking about in classes. So the next question is also for everybody. Something we all discuss as we get older is the old, if I knew then what I know now. So what we'd like to hear is what you would have done differently during your undergraduate years and how it might have helped you. And this might have been working part-time, joining a club, or anything else you might have done differently during undergrad. And maybe we'll start with Jenna again, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Cool.
All right. Ooh, all right. If I knew then, okay, I wish I knew then. I guess for me, I worked through school to pay for it. So personally, I probably undergrad have more fun. I've loved hotel management since I started here, and so I worked starting as a sophomore, and I worked a lot in school. So I just wish I knew then that I could slow down a little bit, and that I didn't need to start and give those 50 hours right away, and try some other departments as well. Tried those later, still came back, but it might have been nice to try them a little bit younger and know that I was good where I was.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd probably say breathe, Like, I was convinced that life was going to be, like, linear, right? Like, I was going to get a job as a desk agent, and then I was going to be the assistant manager, and then the manager, and then the director of operations, and then the AGM, and then the GM of a hotel, and then I'd retire. And, like, that was what I saw. It was like this straight line, and it turned out to be not like that at all, right? So I wish my mind constantly wants to plan for like 10,000 years into the future, and you just can't do that. You just can't. Life's gonna throw a curveball at you, or you're gonna be like, wow, I actually don't like this job, you know? Like, I didn't factor that into my plan. So yeah, just relax, kind of go with the flow and like try out a job. Do you like it? Great. If you don't like it, get a new job. You know, don't like put yourself into a plan that's gonna take you places you don't want to go yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'd piggyback on that as well. I'm a big planner as well, and I'm gonna, like you said, do this, 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 and this. And then I graduated. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, the Providence Bruins. This is great. From Rhode Island. Love the Boston Bruins too. This is gonna be awesome. And then they're like, all right, you got to make 100 phone calls a day. And I'm like, well, this did not go how I planned. So you kind of, like you said, you have to try things out. When they offered me the job, I was like, hey, it's a job. I need a job. I need to be paid. Let me give out cold calling. And like I said, I decided that it was not for me. But you got to stick it out. It's hard to bounce around from job to job, so I stuck it out for at least a year. And through that time, I realized that I wanted to get into college athletics. And like I said, I absolutely love it. This is what I love doing. The cold calling thing was not for me. But yeah, you kind of just have to go with it sometimes because it's not going to go exactly how you planned.
Yeah, definitely very, very much the same things. I mean, you just never know which direction life's going to take you. So you kind of, you go with the flow and you make the best of it. I think if I could go back and tell myself one thing, I'd probably say slow down a bit, similar. Double labs, a couple of tries. I don't even really remember it, and that's the problem. I think if I could go back, I would take a little bit more time to enjoy some of those classes that I stacked on top of other classes. And I think the work during my schooling was just what I expected I would do because I would get an education at work and an education here, and that really worked out very well. Some things I do maybe a little bit differently, but you can't go back anyway, so I don't really like answering this question.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd necessarily change things, but I'd say for the group here, I really, really like your story, Brad. I think it's, or Bradley, whatever you like. I think it's cool. I mean, like you really went off the handle. but it's great. I mean, now it's like we're up here preaching to you guys about getting experience. I mean, this dude had like all sorts of experiences, like wild experiences, like running away to Guatemala or whatever he said. I mean, like, so maybe condense that a little, stay in the U.S. or something, but move around, try things, try jobs, try like get your life in now, right? I mean, like, there's plenty of time to work. I started working when I was 16. I was a junior in high school. I started working, and guess what? I'm going to be working for the next 40 years probably still, right? I mean, now, like, you guys enjoy your time now still. Get some work experience, but enjoy what you're doing. I mean, this is like you're going to look back someday. I'm doing it now, and I still say that 19 was one of the best years of my life. Now, I'm 36 now. So have fun, just have fun. That's what I wish I did more of. 7 to 3 in school and 3 to 11 at work. It leaves little room for one thing, and that's yourself.
Yeah, so I feel bad going in the opposite direction here, but I'm going to say also looking back, I wouldn't have done anything differently because at that time, when I think of my mind and the decision that I made, that's what I wanted to do, right? So I wasn't forced to do anything or make any decision that was against what I wanted at the time. So looking back, I might say, hey, I wanted to change something, but that's really not true because my 18-year-old self or my 21-year-old self wanted to make the decisions that I made back then. What I would say, though, if looking back, is I would definitely have taken my education even more seriously. And what I mean by that is throughout my career now, I have paid the price on some things around not being super proficient in like a Microsoft Excel, not being a whiz at PowerPoint, right? Not being a perfected public speaker when I came out of school. I was good, I had a lot of experience, I took some classes, but if I was a little bit more serious, I wouldn't have had to take a little bit of the pride hit. I wouldn't have had to work with other people and get upskilled extremely quickly, right? Because at certain levels in an organization, you're just, you're expected to know stuff that you do not know. And you have to learn on the fly, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do. And these years, you can become proficient at them with the help of your professors and the classroom curriculum. So looking back, I would certainly be a little bit more serious than I was.
So I think mine's kind of a combination of everybody's, is that I wish I had had more time to travel. Like and later in life in my careers, I've traveled a ton, and it's nice to have somebody else pay for it, so that's even better. But I think that that's probably one of the biggest things as I look back. And there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot doing, and when you're putting yourself through school, there's a lot of pressure with that and knowing where money comes from when you leave. But I probably would have, I think with what the university was when I was here, there wasn't a lot I could change or would think about or regret to make happen again. But I probably would have liked to have a little bit of a breather between graduating and then going into the real world, so to speak. So I think that if you have that opportunity to not only grow, like you just mentioned, but the opportunity to take some space and give yourself some space. I'm not saying take 6 months off or a year, thinking of my kids at this point. So I would say, but give yourself some time and some space to realize everything that you did just accomplish when you graduate.
Thank you, everyone. That was quite a mix of responses, but I think with that might resonate with different folks out there, depending upon where they are in their academic or professional careers. So I think that's fantastic. I appreciated, the notion of being ready for the unexpected and trying out jobs, taking that risk, because I also believe that finding out what you don't want to do is equally as important as finding out what you do want to do. So perhaps taking, a job that comes your way, even if you're unsure, might end up, changing the trajectory of your life, your career, and whatnot. So thanks, everyone, for those responses. The next question kind of takes us in a little bit of a different direction. So we're going to ask, what qualities do you look for in younger team members? So that can be in the context of, interns or folks that you're hiring. So what qualities do you look for in those folks? And maybe we'll come back this way and start with Rick again.
So specifically, the qualities I look for right now are, the first question I ask is, why are you here? What's your interests? Why are you doing this? I've had a lot of interns from Johnson & Wales over the last, 10 years that have turned into employees with me. I still have 2 today that are employees of mine. At one point, I think 9 out of my 10 staff were Johnson & Wales graduates, and half of them had started as interns with me. So I think that what I look for is what your passion is, why you're doing this, not that you're just doing it for class credit, not that you're just doing it because you think that you need to do it. But my big thing isn't with anybody, whether it's an internship or whether it's an employee, it's why are you here? What's your interest? Where do you hope to go from here?
Yeah, and I would say I look for 2 things. I look for integrity, and I know at a young age, you don't have a lot of experience where you're up against decisions that your integrity is questioned, but I think your ability to be honest with yourself and your ability to come across as a trustworthy person is the most important thing for me. I cannot sleep at night if I know that I have people in roles at no matter what level of the organization that I cannot trust. And then the second thing is focus. And what I would say about that is oftentimes at a younger age, folks are they're so passionate and they have this grand plan, right? Which is awesome, and you're going to accomplish that and you're going to do those things. But what it does is it creates this person is thinking so much about what they're going to do that they forget where they are. So I need people, I'm paying you to do that job that day, right? So I need you to be focused and committed to what you're coming in to do, right? What you want to do with me or with the organization. So oftentimes, you've got a lot of things buzzing in your head and you're like, well, I'm not going to stay here, but I need the money. This is a 1-year plan for me or a 2-year plan. That's great. You might want to keep that to yourself, right? And then also make sure that you're focused on doing the best at what you're paid to do today. But you need to share your future. You need to share what you want to do and your aspirations and your passion. But sometimes that can leave you a little hazy and not focused on what you're currently doing. So that integrity and focus is really important to me.
Yeah, the honesty thing, it's such an admirable trait, and people are so afraid of hurting people's feelings these days and saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, but sometimes you just need to say what needs to be said in work, so that's something I certainly look for. I want you to be hungry too. I mean, show me that you actually want to be at work. When I was my bellboy job, or bellman, whatever, bell person, I don't know what you call it now. I was a bellboy. It was a bellboy still then. I loved that job. It was my first hotel. It was like the coolest thing in the world to get to be there and get to understand how to hand it or take a tip. That was so awkward for me. But it was such a cool experience, just knowing that I was on my way. So I wanted to be awesome at it. You said something before about you always wanted to be the best at whatever it was you were doing. That's how I felt in that. I want to see that from the person I'm hiring. I want them to, because that was their goal. That might be their rung on the ladder, right? But the biggest thing to me, more than anything, and I do this in every job interview, talk to me like a person. I want to talk to you like a person. Because I'm going to spend more time with you than I'm going to see my daughter this week, right? I mean, we're going to be in the same office from whatever it is, 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. I'm going to see my kid a couple hours each day. I'm getting more time with you than I'm getting with the people that I hold near and dear to my heart, right? So be able to come into the office and ask me how I'm doing and actually care. Like, be able to hold up a conversation. And I'll tell you, if you ever end up interviewing with me for whatever reason, it's going to be odd. I'm going to talk to you for about 40 minutes and see if you can hold up a conversation with me. And if you can't, then that's not the person I need to work next to. So talk.
Yes, talking is good. Revenue is good. Pay is good. Honesty is really good. I've probably, let's see, I've got about 30 people on my team. We're an international company, so one of my co-founders is from Brazil, and so part of my company operates in Brazil, and the rest of the company, most of what we do is here in the United States. Remote work and technology and the new gig economy, all of those things are swirling about as you guys are deciding what you're going to do or what path you're going to take. All I can say is it's changing really fast, and most of the interviews that we conduct are probably first on a conference call or video call, maybe even just a phone call. And it's tough. I mean, I think about being on the other end of it every time I'm on the other end of it. It's not an easy thing to do. How do you convince somebody that you're an honest person, or do any of that? And I think with the way things are changing today, you just gotta rely on the fact that you've gained enough experience, that you've got that perspective, that you're a personable person, that you're definitely going to answer things honestly, and I think right now employers are thinking more about the personality type and what type of person are you. A lot of companies are moving from human interviews to algorithmic interviews, right? Using artificial intelligence and a formula to determine whether or not you are the right person for that job. And I think that with that it's something that you just you walk into totally clear-eyed, knowing what this job is. I think one of the things that really gets me probably frustrated more than anything as a potential employer is the lack of intelligence into what we do. Like, clearly you're looking for a job that pays you or you're in a certain area or whatever it is. Like, if you don't know a lot about what we're doing, then you're definitely in the wrong place. And I think if you haven't taken that time to do that research into what we do, then I'm not going to take the time to go further. So I think that's probably one of the biggest elements to me is looking at how technology now and the way that we're hiring is changing things. I want a dynamic person that's going to fit in, like you were saying, like fit into my team. My team and what we do has taken me years to build, and adding a new person to that team, I think about very, very, very carefully. And I don't know a lot of other employers right now that are not thinking of it that way. So.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great qualities, obviously, that we're all looking for when we're hiring. So I actually oversee all of our interns, so I'm constantly dealing with students, and I actually have a lot of JWU interns. I'm looking for someone that has the drive that I do to work, in athletics. Don't just tell me you love sports. Any SE kids out there, don't tell me that, because that doesn't do anything for me. I love sports too, but that's not what this job is. Tell me, why is working at Brown going to help you to get to where you want to go next? Is it the behind the scenes stuff of it, where we're planning all week for a game or a special event that's happening within the game? Is that your interest? There's a million things that you can do in the sports industry for any the SE students out here. But yeah, I always look for someone that has that drive. I can easily tell when I'm talking to you in person or on the phone that this is just a requirement that you have to do. You have no idea what you want to do, and you just need to get your internship credits. So when you're looking for internships, go for something that you truly want to do. Don't just take an internship to take it, because it's not going to benefit you, and it doesn't benefit myself or whoever that employer is if there's not that mutual interest in it.
I want to quickly add to my last answer of go with the flow. I think that it's important to notice that we're all kind of, I wouldn't say myself fancy, but we're all relatively fancy for being up here, right? So our problems were we were too focused. If you're coming into the classroom putting your feet up every day, you should get to work, okay? Don't go with the flow. Don't go in and say, oh, Bradley told me to go with the flow, so I can just put my feet up on the desk, all right? I don't want to hear that. Anyway, this answer, I've never hired anybody before. So this is kind of theoretical, but I feel like they would be a pretty cool person, No, I'm kidding. I want them to be, so I'm actually taking my master's courses right now at Roger Williams. Don't throw anything at me. But we're taking a class on different ways to look at organizations called organizational dynamics. And they talk a lot about different frames with which to view an organization. The structural frame of viewing an organization is focused on inputs and outputs. And in that sort of model, you want someone to come in and fit and be efficient. Yeah. Because I have the latitude as a small business owner, I'm going to look for more. They give an example of Harvard University, where Harvard is a big, multi-billion-dollar organization, but each professor has a lot of autonomy in what they do. They don't bring them into a really tightly structured sort of environment. And if I'm giving tours of Providence, I don't need you to be a robot. I want you to have some personality, and that's going to be really important. So I also want to say that if you're the kind of person who thrives on that kind of level of independence, maybe look for a job that's not going to be one of those giant corporations that uses algorithms to decide if you're, worth bringing in, and look for an organization that's going to value your personality and independence, because they are out there. I didn't know that for a long time, but there are a lot of organizations that will boost you up as an individual, and some that don't. And that's totally up to you which one you want to go to.
So when I'm hiring, I'm always hiring for operations roles, guest-facing roles. I'm looking for personality and passion for what we do. They covered all the rest when you go a little bit deeper in honest integrity, willing to work hard. I remember my very first interview for a hotel when I had never worked in a hotel before. And the last question the general manager asked me, he said, I have 3 applications right here, all Johnson & Wales students, all the same qualifications. Why do I hire you and not them? And looking for that passion, all I could tell him was, I can't tell you I'm going to be better than them. All I can tell you is I'm going to give 110% every single day. And so that's what I'm looking for from people, is that passion, that they want to be there, that they want to learn and grow, and personality, because I can teach anyone systems, but I can't teach personality.
Thanks, everyone. Your collective answers on that also were a great Monday morning pep talk. That was great. A lot of you mentioned, things like the job interview and doing the research to make sure that the candidate knows, your company, being honest, the integrity piece, personality, being personable. I'm just throwing this question out to anyone who wants to answer it. Do you have any an additional interview or Skype interview or resume hints, even social media, LinkedIn hints, something that either stands out to you as being really effective for students to maybe think about, or something that stood out as really bad that could also be equally as valuable in this conversation? Just throwing that out to anyone who wants to add to that part of the conversation, please.
I would say number one thing is get your social media in control. That will definitely give a unique look at the personality of a person. And if it's there and it's accessible to anyone, you got to expect somebody's going to be looking at it. And if you don't want them to see the things that are on there, you should definitely change that. Probably number one.
I would add, you got to talk to people. Hopefully by that time you've built a good network, but you do need to talk to people who may have been going for the same role or something of that nature. And you also have to be prepared. I know for my role, the night before, I was given a case study and a business plan to present the next morning. So that would require me to literally stay up until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and figure out, calling people and putting together resources to figure out how I could really, knock the socks off of my new potential boss.
Thank you.
Make your resume like a little different. Don't have it just black and white with your name on it, and like make it pop a little bit, just a smidge, But also don't put your face on it unless your face means something. Like unless you're like a model or something like that. I put my face on mine because there was a cool template online. I was like, ooh, I can put my face on there. But just being handsome doesn't change your ability to get a job. So my friend was like, why is your face on your resume? I was like, I don't know, it's just there. Yeah, so just lesson for the wise there.
I've got kind of a more of a post-interview thing that has been a interesting thing that I've seen over the years is that I had a position that I interviewed 42 people for, and we interviewed 42 people for one job. I was dropping it down from 100. We wanted to be at 40, but 2 other people stood out. One of the biggest things after a post-interview that I found that I really, really liked, and it happened with this particular position, was not just the fact that I got a quick email thank you, or they thanked the secretary or the assistant on the way out, but that I got a handwritten thank you was one of the things. And then another post-interview favorite that's been a favorite thing of mine is that people that are asking more questions. So they've come back to ask me more questions, or send that email, or send it to a member of my team to ask more questions about the job or things they may have forgotten. I find those 2 things incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. You'd be amazed. I know you guys are learning the thank you letter piece, but maybe 1 in 10, I'll see that with an interview, might see 1 thank you come back or 1 thank you email. I'm even good with taking the email at this point. So to add something new in, work on your LinkedIn. You guys all have social media. I can feel mine buzzing in my pocket right now, right? But LinkedIn, it's your professional one, and it should remain as such. You can have your colleagues on there, your friends, your best friends can be part of your network, because they are, right? I've got a couple of my pals that are nothing to do with me, with my professional career, but they're still in there because who knows who they know, right? It's funny when you find out who the 4th person in their chain is, but it's not really for posting kittens. It's, it should be about enhancing yourself. It's your online resume. I get recruiters that reach out to me almost daily, trying to poach me. I don't want to leave my job, but it's nice. And it's like that because it's structured. It's built like your resume. It's supposed to be a professional page, so utilize it.
Yeah, it's another way to add, to get your personality out there and how you want it. You get to design that LinkedIn profile the way that you'd want to be perceived by a potential employer. And I'd say probably the biggest thing I could add to it is that the entire process from initial contact with a secretary or, an HR or somebody at the company to the point where you're post-interview, like you should treat that all as part of the interview. So the email, the communication, like I don't necessarily expect, it's a handwritten note is neat, but like just be effective at communicating, like thank you for having me there. Like that's all it's got to be. Just some sort of, because I think that's another piece is that you're looking at that as the employer, you're looking at it saying, how are you going to treat our customers? How are you going to treat our clients? How are you going to treat our partners if you can't even communicate really well with us? So just keep that in mind. The entire thing is part of it, I think.
After you do your resume and after you do your profile or whatever it is that you're going after there, I think you should ask yourself, so am I showing my individuality, right? That's going to give me an edge and show myself being different than everyone else. And then is it memorable, right? So I think I've got to remember, he had mentioned 42 candidates for one role. I can't tell you, I go through thousands, right? So you need to distinguish yourself from everyone else. And I was always, when I was in your shoes, I was always confident that once somebody met me, I would seal the deal. The problem is you got to get them to meet you, right? So it's got to be memorable and it's got to be individual. And I would tell you the individuality in today's environment is companies are looking for that. They're hungry to find people who are individual thinkers, who like to fail, who like to do things different, right? I say likes to fail. That means that you're willing to take risks. How do you show that on paper? How do you show that through little correspondence and little nuggets of things that you can do along the way prior to gaining that interview?
Just one little thing. He mentioned, you're kind of on the interview the second you start the process. You don't think that Betty, who's sitting outside of the GM's office, isn't going to tell the GM how, you were when you were waiting around. Like if you were a jerk to Betty, the assistant, Betty ends up being the most important person in the hotel, by the way. Don't forget about Betty, for real. Because she's the one managing that guy's schedule. She's the one that knows, or that woman's schedule. She knows everybody. She knows everything that's going on. So she's you probably bring her chocolates when you go to your interview.
I got into that 100% to go back to the story on the 42 people. The person that got the job, we narrowed it down to 3 candidates. The one that I ended up hiring was the one that sent the secretary and assistant, my assistant and the secretary, both thank you written notes as well. That's what brought her over the top.
Her name was not Betty. That's what they were just saying. Thanks, everyone. That was amazing advice. I appreciate that. So this will be the last question before we start Q&A from the audience. So students, please be thinking of questions you'd like to ask our guests up here. The last question is, as we wind down, would you each leave us one final piece of advice that you believe the students need to hear before beginning their careers? And we won't start with Rick because he just took a sip of water. Jenna, can we start with you? Thanks.
Absolutely. So I think that everyone made some really good points today about you never know where your career is going to take you. Where you are you should be where you love to be. I love to go to work every day. I don't have trouble waking up in the morning. I've done jobs where I had trouble waking up in the morning. They don't work out. You should love what you do, and you should find passion every single day and motivation every single day at your work. And that is a career to me. That's my advice to you.
My advice would be define your own success, okay? Because right now, maybe you're in a room full of hotel majors, and right now success for everybody looks like being a GM at a hotel. And you might go along with that for a while, you might be on the, that's what success is. Okay, everyone's going to do this now. And that might not be what success is. Success looks different for everybody, Some people's success is money, sometimes it's being able to run your own business, sometimes it's teaching elementary school, success looks like so different for everybody. And I want you all to know that you get to choose what that is. And it took me a long time. I had to leave the country and go all over the place to realize that success is up to me. I get to decide what success looks like for me.
I would say while you're here for your 4 years, build as many relationships as you can. I know, throughout this morning we've talked about networking, but just build those relationships. Like I said, I did undergrad here, and then I went to graduate school. Got my master's at Syracuse University. A big part of that was Professor Frazier wrote me a letter of recommendation. I kept in contact with him. I kept in contact with Dr. Larry, and just throughout the years, and then full circle coming back when I applied to my job at Brown. Well, I remembered freshman year when Professor Frazier was talking about his experience. Well, he actually worked in marketing in Brown in the 90s, so reached out to him, said, hey, do you know so-and-so? I actually have an interview with them. Well, wouldn't you know, he worked directly with my boss now. So just continue to build the relationships, whether it's someone that you're in class with, whether it's a professor, because you never know when that's going to come back. And it's definitely very beneficial, and I think here at Johnson & Wales is a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, I'd have to say one of the biggest things that I think has been profound for me to understand is something that I would just recommend is learn the difference between passion and obsession. And if you can work in obsession, if that's like possible for you, I mean, it's like the greatest thing ever. I mean, it's not, not spending time with your family. Work-life balance to me is a myth. Like, it's just, if you're obsessed with something, if you're obsessed beyond a passion, and when you're going to bed thinking about it and you wake up thinking about it, wanting to do it, wanting to be there, not needing any other reason, like that is, in my opinion, like the holy land. It's where you go to be very happy. And I think it took me a long time to figure that out. I have a lot of passion for a lot of different things, but I'm obsessed with one thing. And I was lucky enough eventually to find that. But I think it's something that I wish I would have known earlier.
3 things, I guess. Be true to you, be true to yourself with whatever you end up doing. Because your mental health is going to be the most important thing to carry you through the rest of your life. Learn Excel, please. Please learn how to use Excel.
Good advice.
Please. And just do good things. I mean, you have the opportunity to do good things, and no matter what your role is. I'm not gonna toot my horn, but I gave a homeless man my shoes a couple months ago. He was standing outside in his socks in the pouring rain, and I took my shoes off and I gave them to him. You can do that sort of stuff in any job, in any role, and it doesn't have to be something dramatic like that, but you can do good when you have the opportunity, and you're all going to be leaders. You're going to be future leaders of hotels and businesses and have your own companies and drive a bus full of people around and maybe go to Guatemala, and somebody's going to need your help. And just use your knowledge and do good things.
And for me, I would say do not blame others, because when you do that, you give up your power to change. So what I mean by that is by having an ownership mentality. So if you come out of college and you're offered $40,000 and you say to yourself, that's just disgusting, right? I know I'm worth more. It's just this company has no idea what I can do for them, or whatever that may be. What I want you to do is I want you to not blame them. I want you to blame yourself, right? And what I mean by that is I want you to look inside and I want you to say, well, I don't have a proven track record of success. Well, maybe I didn't clearly articulate the value that I can show this company. Or maybe this is the standard rate for an entry-level job in this field, in this location right now, right? And then that will, right, put that concern and that blame to bed, right? So I want you to think about that. That doesn't mean that as you progress in your career, you can't ask for more and you can't, do all of these other things. But I think that, every shortcoming that I have had, I've looked at as an owner, right? So if something's wrong in the job that you're working today, or in a classroom or something like that, I want you to change your perspective, right? And I want you to hold yourself accountable. How are you contributing to adding to the colorfulness of that curriculum by giving feedback to the professor in a professional way. How are you doing that for your employer in the same way, right? So that is the ownership mentality, and I think a lot of people this day and age like to pass the blame. So that would be my advice.
So mine's a little bit different, and this did start at Johnson & Wales. I look not just for what the passion is or what I'm going to feel for the job or what I've done, and a lot of my career has been being an entrepreneur, but I look at what can be given back. So what can you give back? And mine started here with the community service club that I joined, and for the last 2 or 3 years, I was involved in stuff in the city that I never would have thought about growing up in Syracuse, New York. And I think that I try to relay that to the teams that I work with, to the colleagues that I have. I sit on 5 boards of directors right now, none of them are paid. Okay, and I come to the university as often as I can to the professors that request that I come back. That's not paid and takes time out of my schedule. I have my kids get involved in things, I have my employees get involved in things. I think that if we all can't find something, whether it's donating your pair of shoes or donating your leftover clothes, if you can't find a way in this day and age to give back, I think that, it says a lot about us as individuals and as society. So I look at when I'm getting involved in companies and getting involved with people, how I can give back.
Thank you, everyone. Again, really inspiring responses there. I was writing down a few things while you were speaking. I think there was kind of a mix of reach for the stars, keep realistic at the same time, and stick to your guns with making sure you stay true to yourself, and do good and learn Excel. Definitely learn Excel. I mean, thank you for driving that point home, of course. So at this point, we'd like to open up the floor for students to ask questions to our guests. And there are microphones on either side of the room. Professors can ask questions as well. And so we'd like some folks to come on down and just, add to the conversation, if you would. Thanks, CJ. Woo!
Thank you. This is actually a question for Jenna. Hi. You mentioned earlier that you started in corporate management and training program, and I actually will be starting one when I graduate, but I've never worked in a hotel before. So is there any advice you could give me?
Well, first, congratulations. It's wonderful. So the advice I'll give you is you're going to rotate through all the departments. The opportunity that you get with a program like that to build relationships with every department and to learn how their role affects your role is invaluable. So learn everything you can. Don't cut yourself when you're in culinary, and have a lot of fun. I can still walk back into the hotel that I did my CMT program in and am recognized there by stewards and servers to this day. I was actually there just last week, and they're like, hey, Jenna, I haven't worked there for 13 years because of the relationships I was able to build by doing a program like that. So congratulations and have so much fun.
Thank you.
Some more questions, folks. I can ask some. Was there a particular story you could tell about, networking that just totally was not something you'd expect to have resulted in something that made a difference in your career? I just think back to some folks who, either were someone I met and then they'd call me a year later and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're the one who's going to get me this gig that is so cool. And yay, great that I impressed you. Thank goodness for that. Do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, sure. So, this wasn't someone who I knew. In fact, a lot of the people that I knew back in high school are trying to get me to join Ponzi schemes. That happens all the time. Look forward to that. That's definitely going to happen. You're like, oh, I haven't seen from you in a while. You want to sell products? No, I don't want to do that. But I was working at a hotel, Providence Marriott, and like I said, I was interested in politics, and conversation just sprung up because I was moving through the lobby, and the gentleman had the flag. His pin was the flag of Rhode Island crossed with the flag of the United States, and usually that's a Congress or a Rhode Island federal delegation, something or other. So I asked him about it. I was like, hey, what's this about? Are you here with the Congressman? Yeah, Congressman Langevin. Congressman Langevin from Rhode Island's 2nd District is coming, and I'm his front person. I said, oh, we started talking. Internship, congressional internship down in Warwick for 6 months. So I was like, wow, that really, it just came together from a happenstance conversation. You just talk about a pin and suddenly you're working for the congressman, So that was a kind of a nice little thing for me.
That's really cool.
And my very first hotel job, I worked with someone, we overlapped for like 2 months before she had left. And when I got my most recent role, she is at my property and told my GM, you absolutely need to hire her. And we knew each other for 2 months, 13 years ago. So
Wow,
it can make an impression.
My very first investors in my company were the owners of the restaurant that I was doing my internship at. So it just, you end up with all kinds of situations like that. I will say that every single freaking one of the networking events that I've ever said, like, I'm not going to go to, and I end up going to, something important happened at them every time. And so now it's kind of a joke in my mind. I'll be like, I'm not going to that one. And, like, just maybe something big or something important or something cool will happen from it. But you never know.
For me, my first boss, who was a store manager of a Target years ago, he's now my peer in Walmart in another region, and he helped me along the way, and just being under his tutelage and having that connection, understanding my work ethic and understanding what I'm all about has certainly played a role in where I am today and kind of how well I do on the job. So. That networking piece is huge.
My senior year at JWU, I was working at the Westin as a concierge, and one of the owners of a restaurant that I would send a lot of guests to came in, and he was coming to the restaurant in the hotel, which was now, the chef is now a Johnson Wales graduate from there, Westminster Nix on Broadway. He was the chef at the time, and he was bringing in a VIP guest, and he asked me to meet him at the bottom of the escalator to help escort the guest upstairs. So I went to the bottom of the escalator, and the guest was Julia Child. And he asked me to escort her to the restaurant. My shift ended 15 minutes later, and they saw me leaving and asked me to come in and sit down with them. And I ended up sitting with them. Time goes by. I see her again a month later at an event that someone invited her to that I was attending in Boston. And she took my phone number and my email at the time, her assistant. And time goes on. Julia Child introduced me to Jacques Pepin, Emeril Lagasse, all these different people over the course of the years. They came and had a conference here in Providence. When I opened a restaurant on Federal Hill, she came and helped with the design and attended the grand opening and then attended a wine dinner. And the relationships of things like that, I was friends with her until her death. But all from being a concierge at the Westin Hotel.
That's incredible. Wow, Rick.
Drink me under the table.
Oh my goodness. Some folks mentioned the networking events. Like kind of a conversation I often have with students is, how do I start up a conversation? It's so awkward at a networking event. And I remember going to them myself. Any quick tips for how to start up those conversations at networking events or just at events in general?
So right now I'm wearing this pin up here. I like pins a lot because they're a great conversation piece. Really, anyone's right. I already talked to the story about pins, so let's just keep it going. So I'm a member of the Rotary International. I just joined kind of recently. There's a lot of really older people, but I'm like the youngest one there, and it's really awesome, and everyone's so happy to help me and happy to have me there. And so often if I go into a networking room, I'll wear a pin or I'll look for someone else's, like a distinguishing thing that they might be passionate about, and it's very easy to connect with someone over that. Just ask them a question. People love when you ask them questions about themselves. They love talking about themselves. It's what they're most comfortable talking about usually. If they're at a networking event, they probably want to talk about themselves. So if you're looking to try to get into a conversation, say, hey, that's a cool pin. What are you doing with that? And they're like, oh, I do this, they're so happy to talk about it. So ask people about themselves. Definitely a good way to start a conversation.
All right, any other last bits of advice you'd want to share to the students, or anything that you think just even a one-word answer embodies kind of the hospitality spirit within the industry? Excel.
I would say just be a student of the business, right? And no matter what role you're in and no matter what you're doing, just have a natural curiosity. You should be described as a person that just wants to learn. Because, like this gentleman here said, people love to feel important. They love to share their knowledge and their expertise. When you come off as a person who is going to soak it all up and learn from someone, they will take you under their wing, and you will get a lot more than you might be paying for.
Thank you. We have a student question.
Hi, my name is Jolene. I had 2 quick questions. The first one was, how do you actually accept a tip correctly? That's one.
Awkwardly and humbly, I would say, is the right way. You know, when I was doing it, I was working at I'd say it was a mid-scale luxury property, and we had a lot of international travelers, so you know, I had to learn how to take the $50 tip just as I would take the 50-cent tip, just with graciousness. It's okay, because it's recognized in some roles that it's just going to happen, right? I mean, people know they're going to give their server a tip at a restaurant, or it's almost expected with valet or a bellman, or you know, there are roles like that. I mean, take it as they don't have to do that. You know, that's the way I always processed it, was like they were appreciative enough to take extra money out of their pocket to give to me because of the service I provided them. So I was always very humble about it, and just be gracious. I mean, it's kind of like what I said before. I think as long as you're real, I think it's okay.
All right, thank you for that one. And then this one's for Bradley. Since you started up your own business, what was the process in doing that?
Oh man, there was like a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. But, well, I mean, I'd say the most important thing is to find something that you want to start a business doing, you know? Like, you shouldn't just go into the peanut business if you don't like peanuts that much, or if you're allergic to nuts, right? That's kind of important. But yeah, so first find your passion. Find something that's really important to you. Find something that's going to drive you, and you're actually going to want to wake up and do that for a long time. Then, I don't know how logistical you want to go. You got to go to the state, you got to file an LLC, you got to go to the bank, you got to open a business bank account. There's like a whole bunch of different things. And it's really great because I actually still connect with Johnson & Wales quite a bit. There's a professor, Dr. Magnus Thorson, who has been advising me a lot on my business as well. He's helping me with entrepreneurial finance. Stay in touch with your professors and community members, because they will definitely be more than happy to support. Again, you asked me a question, I'm talking about myself. I love that, you know? So like, thank you for doing that. Yeah, so like, people like talking about their own experiences, talking about themselves, and they're happy to give you that advice. So don't be afraid to ask for help too.
And also for Matt, because that's also something.
I mean, you got to start, you know, probably best place to start is start writing stuff down. You know, I mean, like there's a lot of things that start, I mean, from where I started to where I am now, I mean, it's not the same company. It's not even the same idea, really. There's some foundational pieces to it, but it'll change. And the point is, if you write it down, you can actually recognize when it changes, as opposed to just thinking about it a lot, and eventually you're just like, yeah, this is what it was always supposed to be, you know? So I think it also depends on the type of business, is the type of entity that you want to start. So getting legal help early is really probably like one of the best things you can do. Knowing whether or not you should have an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp or, you know, whatever other variety of you know, vehicle you want it to be. But where's it going to go, and, you know, where might it go, are two things you should really consider before you do that. You know, just knowing what type of business model you need to have will help you determine what legal entity that you should start.
Thank you. All right, we also have a question over here as well.
Hi.
Thank you.
My name's Mia, and you guys gave great advice. Thank you. While like studying hospitality, one thing, I wouldn't say concern, but like one thing that presses my mind a lot is work-life balance, and like how to enjoy yourself and enjoy your friends and family, all while having these crazy hours that I envision I will have, especially early in a job in this industry. So I was just wondering if you had any advice as to how to make that work or manage those hours, all while having like a personal life.
Great question.
It's not easy. The short answer is, it's not easy, especially when you're just starting out, because more is expected of you, and you, as everyone has said here, you want to put yourself out more. The best advice I can tell you is that it comes. It will come, and you'll find the right way and the right time to pace yourself off. I had a position where I was flying back into the airport, and my staff was meeting with a suitcase, and my kids would meet me at the airport for a coffee before I got on the next plane. It's challenging. It's incredibly challenging, but it does come. And there's not a simple answer, so I don't want to pretend to give you one, but it does come, and at the beginning, there are sacrifices you'll have to make.
Yeah, I would say too, Mia, work-life balance it isn't given to you. It's created over time, especially if you're salaried. And I'd say, the better you are at your existing role, the more freedom within that framework you have. I'm here today. I'm not off. This is what I'm doing for my day, right? So you create your own balance based on what your priorities are. And I would tell you, family would always be number one. Even if you're single and you don't have a family, right? Like your mom, your dad, whatever you got going on, right? It will probably continue to be the most important thing throughout your life. And you don't have to sacrifice that. But you do have to figure out how you're going to create your own individual approach to it. It does take a lot of careful, thoughtful reflection. But it also, in me, anybody who comes to me and says, I'm struggling with that, it really comes down to, well, your market's struggling, right? The performance is struggling, and that's why you are in this vicious cycle of having no balance. So I think if you are running a great business and you have great folks working for you, that will fall in line. But again, you have to create your version of that.
Yeah, on the personal front, if you wanted to look at it even granular, I was struggling with it for a while too, and I found little bits of my day that I could rearrange. So like I go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, but I've moved that based on how my life was going. So like I found that from like 9:30 at night to 10:30 at night, I was like sitting around watching TV and really wasting my hour before bed. And usually probably had a drink with that or some garbage food, right? So I switched it up, and I started going to the gym early in the morning. So now like I'm there at 5 a.m. It sucked for a while getting used to that, but what I ended up doing was I replaced that 9:30 to 10:30 hour. Now I'm in bed at 9:30 because I'm like wiped, but I've got now a productive 5 hours, throughout the week in the morning that I've given up some crap at the end of the day for. So that was one way I just modeled my day. So you have to look for your opportunities to.
You need to promise that if you're miserable and you don't want it that bad, that you'll do something else, okay? So I didn't want it that bad. I was working as an assistant manager at the front office of the Providence Marriott downtown. I was working 50-hour weeks, 2 to midnight, Wednesday through Sunday, and I was upset. I just didn't like that work anymore. It was killing me. So I said, catch you later. That's all you got to do. Of course, again, I have a much higher appetite for risk than a lot of people. Most people would look for another job before they step down. Well, I missed that lesson, unfortunately. But yeah, if you really want it really bad and you're ready to drill and you're ready to just go for it, then, follow these tips. But if you don't want it that bad and you find that you're really miserable, the world has a lot of miserable people. We don't need any more of those people, So do something that you're gonna be passionate about that you can find a better balance with.
Yeah, and I'd say for all of us, work-life balance is different person to person. There's no perfect equation to it. You're gonna miss things, that's just the way it is. You'll miss family parties, you're gonna miss trips with your friends. But like I said, for me, and I'm sure for them, when you do miss it, you're at work, but it's something that you enjoy doing. And what I try to do when I am not at work, if I'm with my family or with my friends, I try to focus on them. Don't get me wrong, there's gonna be a time where it's work calling and I know I have to pick it up, but it's also prioritizing, how important is this really right now? And that's kind of how I've dealt with it.
Yeah, totally. And I had said, I'm not a huge fan of the work-life balance idea. I think that it's all changing so fast. Like I mentioned, how you get a job, how you work. Most people are now working at home, or at least at home for part of their day. I mean, like, it's changing so fast. You really, I would have to say right now, have the greatest opportunity maybe in human existence to have a balanced life, meaning you can work from other locations. You can be, I can't tell you how many times I'm traveling and working. And, you know, like, if I can take those moments to put down my phone and pay attention to my kids, or pay attention to, you know, what I need to enjoy at a baseball game or a football, whatever it is, those things are the important, you know, how you balance your life is the most important aspect of it. And I think if you're obsessed with something, like, it's never going to come down to like your kid's first whatever, or your, you know, your wedding, or whatever the most important thing is at that point. Like, there's nothing that I do that's more important than a lot of those things. But, you know, at the end of the day, you want to be doing something that, you know, you've got to force yourself to take those breaks and find those opportunities, you know.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you for that question. We have more questions over on this side.
Hi, I'm Abby. Thank you guys for coming in today. So I just received my second job offer and accepted it in event management, and right now they're looking for me to get clients, but how do I respectively use my networking people to bring them back into my career to be future clients for my job?
I would say, kind of back to something we talked about before, if they're in your network, then they're in your network for a reason. And so you should feel as comfortable talking to them about the weather as you could about work, right? So I think it's okay to tell them, just say, be honest and be straight up with them. Like, listen, I'm starting this new role. This is something that I'm doing. You know, do you have a need for it? And if so, or not, maybe if not even today, if you have one down the road, just remember me, and that's why I'm here in the first place.
I think it starts with value. If what you're doing is valuable to people in your network, then it's valuable. You know, there's value there for them, and it's like knowing that you can get, I don't know, half-price tickets to an event or something like that. You would tell your friends, right? Like, if there's value there, truly, then tell them.
Yeah, absolutely, and be honest about that, because like sometimes people they'll inbox me. Yeah, that's the worst. Yeah, you're right. Like, oh, how you been? You know, like, how's Johnson & Wales treating you? And you'll be like, it's good. What are we talking about? We haven't spoken since high school, right? Like, yeah. So if you're gonna go into a conversation, you gotta get in and get out. You're gonna be like, hi, I'm starting this new job. We're doing this thing. Would you be interested in hearing more about it? Make the ask light. Like, they don't have to commit right then and there, but just say like, all right, do you want to hear about this? Because I'm doing this new thing. And I think that would do your friends a lot of good.
If you leverage LinkedIn properly, you can write posts and different stories about what it is you're doing, and then let them come to you instead of, you know, trying to sell to them or something like that.
I was just going to say, the event side of things is a lot easier to connect with people on because everybody wants to have fun. So if you're making posts that are relative to the things that you've done and people are seeing it when you're reaching out to them, they're going to be like, oh, well, you're doing some cool stuff. So I think that you're got a little bit of an advantage that a lot of people don't when you approach stuff. The event side of things is a fun industry, and everybody's planning it, whether it's a birthday party, a wedding, or a corporate thing. There's a niche that's there, so it's a lot easier of an approach for you.
And then I would, not that I have a lot of experience in events, but from a product perspective, I would say, you know, have you attended the event that you're pitching? Have you participated in it? Have you used it? You know, if you were trying to sell me, I would genuinely be able to tell whether you know what you're talking about, right? Especially for folks that have more experience and so on. So, you know, you have to be really comfortable with what you're selling and what value you're pitching.
What social media platform do each of your businesses use the most?
Yeah, we're heavy gram, a little bit of Facebook.
Okay, Facebook and Instagram, yeah.
We're mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram, but that's huge.
Same thing, yeah, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So all of our executives use LinkedIn all the time to kind of sell their story and the narrative.
Same, but I'm told I got to learn about TikTok, but it scares the hell out of me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jess, and as a student who's currently seeking out an academic internship, the one part of the interview process that kind of gets me is, because I've gotten a different answer every time I've asked this question, whether it be a supervisor or whatever, and I know it's kind of a really small little detail-oriented question, but you guys touched upon the thank you note, and my question is, at what point after the interview do you send the thank you note? Is it the same day? Is it the day after? I don't know. I just get a different answer every time I ask. So.
To me, it's the same day, partially because I feel that if people don't send it the same day, they're going to forget the reason they're sending it or what they want to say or how they're going to approach it. So to me, it should get it out the same day, whether it's via email or it's written. I think that's for you and for the individual that you're sending it to. I think it makes the most sense.
Yeah, and I would mail it, number one. And then number two, I would make a connection between something specific in that interview, in that thank you note. And that's how you create memorability.
I would add that I don't send thank you notes. I just want to throw that out there because like when you're a hotel manager, you got so much stuff going on. Like you're running around and there's fire in the kitchen and there's a whole bunch of things happening. And oftentimes you don't have time to sit down and like read a thank you note. I'm sorry, not to poo-poo your advice, but like I tend to, usually I'll send an email afterward, like a week after, if I haven't heard back from them, I'll send an email like, hey, thanks so much for the interview, just wondering what the next steps were, blah, 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 just kind of just remind them, because basically my role in that is try to help them keep their lives together, because it's so, this is maybe specific to the front office of a hotel, you know, maybe in a,
As the director of a front office, I say same day.
okay, all right.
I do look for that because I interview a lot of people, and that's what sets some people apart, especially the personal part in the interview. To give me something to remember you, because you may have been in a lineup of 6 interviews that day. Maybe not, but maybe. And so that thank you note with that personal connection that we might have made is going to come back to me when I'm reviewing again those 6 applicants.
Thank you.
We have a question over here, actually, as well.
Hi, my name is Broderick. I was wondering what the biggest challenges you faced were and how you've overcome them.
That's a loaded question. Holy God.
The biggest challenge professionally, I think it was going into the wrong role at the wrong time of my life. I mentioned to you guys before, I took that AGM job at the Residence Inn in Brockton, and outside of vacuuming the glass out of people's front windows on their cars every morning, it was I went from being an assistant front office manager to now overseeing 3 departments, and I kind of, we talk about the ladder, right? And I sort of skipped a few rungs and then found myself very overwhelmed and not enjoying the experience. It took everything I had to push through 13 months there. I was in over my head, and I think the challenge was accepting that piece of it, and that I needed to go back and kind of learn my way. And that's okay. I actually turned out to be the greatest blessing was taking the step back, because then that put me on a better path. But it's okay to know when something's not right for you, but I think the challenge comes in recognizing that and then being brave enough to change it. Because once you get in there, you get scared, like, I can't bail on this, it's gonna ruin my resume if I'm here for a month, but it's okay. I mean, like I said, the whole mental thing, I was going nuts and I burned myself out there, thought I was gonna leave hospitality forever. I started doomsdaying myself over this one stupid job, and anyway.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on what I said, there's a ton of things that are going to be challenges in your career. There's no doubt about it. But I think that being overly afraid to fail is a dramatic challenge, because you're going to face as many successes as failures most people do in their career. So I think that that's one of the biggest things, is to realize when you fail that you have to pick yourself up and how you get back from that, to piggyback on what he's saying. But that's a challenge. A lot of people don't know what it's like, or don't know how to fail to a certain degree, and don't know how to move on from there.
I think the idea that failing is, I mean, I feel like I'm an expert at failing. Like that's pretty much what I'm very good at. And what I'm really, really good at, and maybe better than most people, is never making the same mistake twice. So if you can do that, you know, I mean, probably the biggest challenge is just dealing with failure all the time.
And I would say for me right now in my business, it's technology and wages. So, you know, anything that you invest in today, you have to make sure that you quantify the ROI you're going to get in the future. And with how fast technology changes, what I invest in today, I could have spent millions of dollars on it. In 2 years, it's useless. And now I have to update again, or the company tells me that actually we can't make an update on that. You need to buy all new units, or whatever that looks like, right? That could be self-checkouts that I've got to change in all stores that I just invested in 2 years ago, right? So, and then when you think of local municipalities and states and the federal government and the pressure and the narrative around wages and wage pressure, you have to do more in your current business today to continue to have the same margin you had yesterday in order to reinvest in your business. So if I don't have free cash flow after everything is paid, I can't improve the checkout experience for customers. I can't get a more variety on the shelf. I can't flow product faster. So I would say technology and wages is a real concern. And if you know the answer, give me a call.
I'd say one of the challenges I first dealt with coming into, at least in my industry, and I'm sure it's with all of you guys, is how to learn to work with less and how to be efficient with what you have. So within 2 years, I went from Syracuse to Harvard to Brown, 3 very different athletic departments. Brown, we're the second largest athletic department in the country, but we don't have that budget. So it was a struggle at first learning how to work with what we have. You know, you're going to be some places where you may be understaffed or you don't think you have enough money in your budget, but you just have to work with it and find a way to be efficient with what you have. For me, that was a big challenge at first.
I think we have time for 2 quick questions. We have 2 people over there. It's great.
Okay, so now I'm nervous because we kept talking about the thank you notes, but I have another question on that. I know like the interview process that I've been in and I'm in now is like on HireVue, like the automated thing. Like what if you're going through a talent acquisition manager and like the people that are interviewing are on a panel? Like, do I creepy stalk them on LinkedIn and message them? Like, I just don't know, like, how, like, to be able to do that extra thing that, like, stands out, like, I guess, how would you go about that?
This question would come from you. I would say yes, that there's always a way to find out who's a better part of it and who's participated in it, and most of the places, if you ask them, they're going to tell you. So I think that there's always a way to do it. It's about you using your ingenuity to go back to it. That's the way that I know someone that had a similar situation, that they were interviewed and the person that interviewed one wasn't the person with the company, but they looked at who posted the job, which was separate than the talent acquisition, because a job is usually posted in more than one way, and they sent both of them. They said, you know, I just want to let you know I completed an interview with this company with so-and-so, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity because I'm sure it originated with you. Something to that nature, but there's always a way to go back and figure those people out and who they are. It's posted everywhere nowadays.
Don't leave anybody out.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, perfect.
Something about a panel, like being in front of a panel too. Great, like, hack on this. Ask them all for their cards at the end, because just in case you have any extra questions that come up. And then you've got their contact info.
Thank you.
So this is a question because it's been mentioned a few times about like sales pitching and selling yourself. What are some of the best sale pitches you've heard or that you've given yourself, and what really made them stand out?
I'll just speak from a sales perspective. I think sales is a transfer of trust. I'm sure that there's a lot of people around on this panel that have way more experience than me in that regard. But I would tell you that the best sales pitch to me is, whether that's a vendor or supplier or whatever it is, it's where I don't feel like they're selling, right? So they build a relationship. They don't try to get something from me on the first interaction or whatever that may look like. Everybody responds a little differently, but I see it as a transfer of trust when that person's in my corner and I trust them, then you can, you got the in.
Yeah, that's been the repeat theme here, I think, today is we keep talking back to trust and being able to talk to each other. It was kind of what I was harping on before. Like, I don't want, the worst thing in the world is when you go to the car dealership and there's 7 people following you around and they're gonna put you in a car that day. Maybe I just wanted to check out your new Corsica, dude. Like, leave me alone, right? Make me comfortable, don't pressure me into something, because I want, we're all in business. We want to make an educated decision about what we're doing. So the last thing you want is to feel the pressure. There's a right and a wrong way to do that, and I think being human is probably the right way.
Yeah.
I recently had an interview where the interviewee, during our phone interview, asked me some of the challenges that we have in our operation. And when she came in for her interview, had examples of how she can help us overcome those challenges. So that was a great sales pitch that I had gotten.
Yeah, so to follow up on the advice over here, my tendency, I was briefly in sales, for 2 seconds, didn't work out. But my tendency was to be not pushy enough. So the advice that I would give to myself would be, this person is here having this conversation with you because they want to learn more about your product. They want to learn more about what you got to sell them. And sometimes people say this casually, oh, sell me on this, because they want to hear more. They want to decide if this is the decision for them or not. So come at them. Don't get down the throat, but do give them the information that they're looking for at the very least. Yeah, I think that's important too.
Yeah, and I'd say I worked in sales for a year with the Providence Bruins, and it has to be a conversation. It can't be one-sided where I'm just pushing something on you. A lot of my better sales were understanding what it is you're looking for. It might just be a night out with your friends. It could be it's a birthday party, or it might be you're an avid fan. So I might sell you a mini package. I might try to get you to do season tickets. I might just give you a 4-pack that comes with a hot dog and soda for you and your kids to go out. So it definitely has to be 2 ways. And a lot of the easiest sales are when you write down. So like if I call you and I catch you at a bad time because you're at so and so, your brother's baseball game. Well, the next time I call you, I'm going to ask you how your brother's baseball game went, and I'm going to personalize it. So that was always the thing to do. Yeah, take notes while you're talking to people.
Yeah, I was just going to say, attention to detail, in my opinion, through sales is probably one of the things that can make it, seem and really be genuine, and more genuine than being pressured into buying some car.
Thank you to all the students who asked questions. I think that really added even more value to this conversation, so I appreciate that. So want to take this moment to thank our alumni for taking the time out of their busy schedules. So we hope that you found this information insightful and helpful for navigating your own particular career path. The alumni will be here for the next few minutes, ready to talk with you one-on-one, and then feel free to visit with them and grow your professional network. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Another round of applause for our guests, please. That was awesome.
That was fun.
Thanks, Rick. Oh, you mentioned the public speaking. I was like,